Hey, what's up guys, Totallydubbed here, and today I'm doing a video review on the MSI Optix MAG321CURV. Now that's a mouthful. This is a 4K monitor that can be found for around £450 in the UK. Links will be down in the description below in case you're interested, including its competitors, which I highly suggest you check out what I've written in the brackets in the description below to give you an idea of why you might want to consider its alternatives. Now for that price, what do you get? Well, this is a 31.5 inch monitor that runs at 4K. Its maximum refresh rate is 60 Hz. Its quoted response time is 4 milliseconds G to G. It's got a VA panel and a maximum brightness of around 300 nits. At least that's what the website says, and I'll get into that in just a bit. Other than that, in terms of inputs, you've got DisplayPort, 2 HDMI 2.0 inputs, and quite surprisingly, USB Type-C 3.1, which also supports charge. That's pretty rare to see in a gaming monitor because you normally would expect that in a more business-led monitor. In terms of USB inputs, you've got 2 USB Type-A ports, so you can plug in your flash drive or your peripherals on the left-hand side of the monitor. You will need a cable going from the monitor to your PC, and that's provided in the box. There's a 3.5mm jack output for your audio, so you can pass through audio via HDMI or DisplayPort and then output it to your headphones via the monitor directly. You've also got a VESA 100x100mm mount at the back if you so wish. All the rest of the specs will be down in the description below. Do check out MSI's website. Now, in terms of the build quality of the monitor, what I find is I was actually quite a fan of it, specifically because of its 1500R curvature. Now normally I'm not a massive fan of curved monitors because they do add a little bit of odd dimensions on the edges. In this case that was not a problem whatsoever. I had no problems looking at content on the edge, and I felt that the 31.5 inch monitor kind of felt a bit more immersive with that curvature included. Now at the back of the monitor, on the right hand side at the back, so pretty much where my finger is pointing, there is an RGB strip which pretty much goes diagonally up. Now this RGB strip can be customized via the OSD, and I'll show you in just a bit, but in all honesty it doesn't provide any extra lighting other than having, yes, I've got RGB lights on the monitor. It doesn't provide any backlighting that you would expect with such as Philips Ambiglow. So other than aesthetics, it's pretty much pointless. Now the monitor has a 3-sided borderless design and a very small bezel on the bottom, and quite honestly I really like what MSI have done over here, specifically with the build quality of the monitor. It feels sturdy, specifically at the back. It's made of a hard plastic/aluminium compound. It looks and actually feels really good. It feels like it will actually last. The stand is made out of metal and provides tilt adjustment only. Now I can't really provide and show you all the tilt adjustment to its fullest, simply because the monitor just about fits in my IKEA Freddy desk. So yes, you would want to look at the measurements of your desk and see how it fits, and also compare it with the monitor specs as well. So now moving on to the OSD, you've got 2 ways of accessing it. First of all, let's talk about the software. Now the software needs to be operated via a USB cable. That USB cable I talked about before, which enables your 2 USB ports to be used, the Type A ports at the bottom of the monitor, then enables also the OSD. So it'll automatically install the drivers, and then you've got a full suite of OSD settings over here. You've got different pre-made modes. You can even set up a different sort of profile, so to speak. You can have a split window mode, which I think is pretty useless, but nevertheless, you know, your mileage may vary. And you've even got quick access to, such as your pointer speed of your mouse, and that's pretty nice and pretty neat. And you've also got the Mystic light, the RGB light strip at the back, which you can then customize and kind of choose as to what you want. Now what I did find is that yes, the RGB lights can be customized to your liking, but as I said before, pretty useless in terms of actually looking at it. So potentially if I were buying this monitor, I'd probably have it and leave it disabled because I can't really see the benefits of it. So in terms of the OSD, I've got no complaints itself. I actually think it's really intuitive and actually really responsive. Now in terms of the actual manual OSD that you find through the joystick button at the bottom right hand side of the monitor, again provides you a full suite of options, and I must say what MSI have done over here is pretty good in terms of listing the amount of options you've got. However, the actual layout of the monitor is a little bit confusing and can be a little bit cumbersome. However, I can't expect people to be going into the OSD quite frequently. unlike someone like me who's a reviewer and a tester, but nevertheless it's just worth pointing out. As you'll be able to see over here, you've got all the options that you would ever want, be it in terms of image quality settings, or be it in terms of the actual gaming settings. You've got PIP and PBB mode as well that you can enable, disable, customize the nav keys, which I was slightly disappointed that I couldn't customize in terms of the sort of the overdrive or the smart response time of the monitor directly via one of those nav keys. So now moving on from that, let's talk about the panel quality. Now this has a VA panel. Now in terms of viewing angles, as I said before, I had no certain inherent issues. In terms of looking at it with my naked eye, I felt that the image, for example, that you can see in front of you did look a little bit washed out. It's not the first time I've said that about a VA panel. Over the 130 plus monitors I've reviewed, it very much seems to be a sort of recurring trend at times. In this case, there is a little bit of a washed out tone, and I did find it a little bit funny when I was using a HDR, and I'll show you that in just a bit. Now in terms of the color accuracy through a calibrator, what you'll be able to see is these numbers look pretty skewed. You've got an average delta of 2.32 and a maximum of 5.08, and that to me is not very color accurate and not the greatest that you'd expect. It's a gaming grade monitor, but worth bearing in mind nevertheless. The contrast ratio of 1900 to 1 is to be expected because it's a VA panel, and it's very much impressive with the deep blacks of 0.1 candela squared. So, you know, pretty good deep blacks that if you're going to play games like, let's say, Batman, Arkham Asylum, old school game, in the grand scheme of things, it will be displayed pretty well. That said, will the blacks be accurately displayed? Well, no, as you can see from this calibrating report. Now what I did find quite interesting and almost laughable, you can probably hear it from my voice, is it's 330 nits. Now that's the measurement I got at 100 brightness, and yes, I do have it at low brightness right now for the camera to pick up properly, but at 100 brightness it gives you 330 nits. Now this has HDR. Now HDR, in all honesty, on this monitor is completely pointless. I think that nowadays monitor manufacturers are literally putting it just for the sake of saying, hey, I've got HDR. Now this image you'll be able to see has HDR enabled. It was taken on Destiny 2 with HDR enabled through both the display settings on Windows and then on the game itself. Then this image is taken without HDR, running 4K as well. Both are using the same setting other than the HDR being toggled on and off. All I'm trying to point out over here is that the non-HDR image, to me, to my eyes, seemed a lot better. Much more vibrant images, and just seemed a lot better in terms of when I was coming to game. So all I can say over here is that HDR is pointless, and that it's no surprise to see that, because at 320 nits you're not expecting to have a good HDR image. If you want good HDR, look for 600 nits and above, or HDR 600 certified monitors. Now in terms of the actual sRGB coverage, the monitor itself is perfectly calibrated to the sRGB standard, 93.4% gamut coverage, almost 100% in the gamut volume. It's fantastic. This is not made for Adobe RGB or DCI-P3 editors or video editors. I mean, why would you consider this monitor in the first place anyway? But nevertheless, I just thought I should point out it's only made for sRGB, which is perfectly fine when it comes to gaming monitors. So overall, in terms of color accuracy, it's not the best, and the HDR is quite laughable. Then in terms of gaming response, this is where things kind of, like to say, heated up, so to speak. What I found is this monitor is pretty slow when it comes to its input lag. It doesn't really respond as well as some other monitors out there, and it's one of the things I pretty much instantaneously picked up when I started playing Counter-Strike. Now, the response time of the monitor, which isn't to be confused with the input lag, is decent. Well, at fast mode, you get a limited amount of overshoot. It's still present, but it's a limited amount of overshoot, but makes it a little bit more playable for even casual games. On the normal setting, the response time of the monitor becomes a lot slower, whilst on the fastest mode setting, and you probably won't see it over here, it becomes pretty much unplayable because the amount of overshoot ghosting, it really does take away from the image quality. So really, if you want to be using this monitor for gaming, I would use it on the fast mode. Would I use it for competitive gaming? Absolutely not. This is a 4K 60Hz panel with pretty slow input lag. It's not what I'd recommend for competitive gaming. But for casual gaming, no problem whatsoever, nothing overly as such. other than that input lag that I mentioned. But as I said, casual gamers probably won't be too bothered in that respect. So overall, recommend this monitor? Well, it's a little bit hit and miss. In some respects, I do like the aspects of this monitor. It's a big screen monitor, it's got a curvature, it's really well built, the OSD is comprehensive, you've got a full suite of options there. Resolution, you've got 4K, which is great to see, and you've got USB Type-C, which is nice in terms of inputs for, let's say, Macs or Dells or HPs of these days. But in terms of the rest of its competitors, I would say it's among the better end of the scale of gaming grade 4K monitors. If you really want a 4K monitor, this might be one for you if you're a gamer. If, however, you're a color editor, want some nice color accuracy of such, there's far better monitors out there, and be sure to check in the links in the description below for those suggestions. In other words, this monitor is decent for casual gamers. It's not one to be taken seriously, but that said, who would take a 4K 60Hz monitor seriously into a competitive game like Counter-Strike? So that's pretty much it. That's my opinion. It's not that bad of a monitor, but neither is it that good. So that's pretty much it. If you got any questions, make sure you ask me down below. If there's anything I've missed, again, do ask me. In the description below, as I said, you'll find the links to all of this, including the specs, which I highly suggest you check out, including like the dimensions of the monitor. If you want to help the channel grow and continue this honest, unbiased content that you see in front of you, then make sure you give it a like, subscribe if you want to see more, favorite and share with your family and friends, and there we go. Alright guys, I've been Totally Tubbed, take care and bye bye.